Hi people, how are you doing? I hope you're having a fantastic damn day. Welcome back to the channel. And today we will be doing Pioli's 4-3-3 formation at AC Milan. Of course, they have had a very good start to the season. I know they did lose to Juventus like a few days ago, and that wasn't great, obviously. But nonetheless, they are sitting currently second in the Serie A table as things stand. They've somewhat rebuilt this team, of course, selling Sandro Tonali in the summer, 70 million coming in for them, using that money very wisely to bring in some great key additions to help this team reach the next level. So we'll start off with the team going forward. We've got, of course, Rafael Leao as our left winger. We've got Giroud and Pulisic to finish the front line. Pulisic, a new signing, of course. We've got Musa, Benacer, and then Reinders. Fantastic player, this, I must say. Signed from, I think, from Feyenoord for like 20 million or so. Fantastic, honestly. We've got Theo Hernandez, Tomori, Kalulu, and then Calabria. And then between the sticks, we've got Mainan. Then on the subs area, we've got Jovic, Jaquazi, Loftus-Cheek, Krinic, Sportillo, Teal, and then, of course, Kiar. And then in the reserves, we've got players like Pogbega, Adli, Romero, Florenzi, Pellegrino. I mean, Okafor's a fantastic signing, might I say, and of course, Morante. And then there's a few other players I don't care to mention. So for this formation going forward, there's no real changes to it. It's a 4-3-3 holding. Like I say, I haven't moved anybody around, so it's one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, one DM, two central midfielders, one striker, and then, of course, two wingers. So for the tactics going forward, the tactical vision, I have set it to wing play, and that best describes and suits what AC Milan try and do. And if you are looking to replicate and recreate their tactics, wing play is the best option going forward. Of course, they have very dominant wingers, Leao, Jaquazi, Pulisic, just to name a few. Of course, you've got Romero off the bench, all very good with the ball at their feet in those wider areas. Of course, you are going to get your wing backs or your full backs involved in the builder play as well, with the overlapping or underlapping runs that they will look to supply for the wingers. So a lot of the time, you will work the ball into the center of the park and then work it out wide. And a lot of their attacks start from the wider regions of the field. As for the defensive style, however, pressing off the loss of possession is essential. You could say that this new look midfield that they have brought in, it's built on energy. Reinders, energy. Musa, energy. I mean, even Ruben Loftus-Cheek is built on energy. Of course, you've got Krinic, who is an energy bunny himself. And I mean, Benacer is very good with being able to position himself in the right places at the right time, making it look like he's just everywhere. So pressing off the loss of possession is essential. I mean, against Juventus, up until the red card, they were winning that ball back effortlessly. Juventus could not move out of their own half at times. That's how dominant their press was. So to try and replicate that, of course, press after loss of possession. As for the team width, however, I have set it to 55. This will help you try and prevent those crosses into the box. But of course, it does open up a few little spaces in between the lines for players to try and work with, especially your opposition. So be a bit wary of that. But nonetheless, you will prevent those wide arcing crosses being whipped into your third or your box. The team depth, however, is set to 70, and this is more or less the higher side of the mid block. Of course, you do have benefits from playing it as a 70. You are defensively and structurally sound at the back. You can't always be exposed. But again, Kalulu and Tomori are very adequate and very equipped to beat the player who is making that run in behind. So their recovery pace is quite solid. But again, because you have that, it does mean that you are more defensively sound. So they do have the ability to somewhat play a slightly higher line, be in the opponent's half at times, winning the ball back and then circulating it back into play. And of course, it is going to somewhat be a possession-based style of football that Pioli and you will look to try and implement for this team going forward. On the offensive side of things, fast build-up is essential. We see more times than not Rafael Leao running down the wing, getting in behind the opposition with his runs, as well as on the right-hand side with Pulisic. Now, they do obviously have varying and different instructions, but nonetheless, they will always look to try and, when they win the ball back, try and trigger the transition play and then get forward. And then speaking of the chance creations, forward runs is set to be on, getting in behind, having your forwards being able to run into the open space that more times than not the defense will look to leave in behind them. And then as for the width, it is set to 80. Of course, it is set to wing play, which means you do need a bit of width in your team. And you do want to have players in those wider regions, opening up space in the center of the park, either for a Giroud or whoever your center forward is, to have them have a bit more space in and around them, as well as for your midfield to be able to have a bit more space in and around them as well. Of course, with the width set to 80, it will mean that your fullbacks as well as your wingers will be operating in similar areas, but the link-up play between the two, or the two positions, I should say, is quite effective for your team. As for the players in the box, however, it is set to 7. You want the likes of Giroud, Reinders. Of course, Reinders does make those late bursts into the box. and maybe your other winger to be able to make those runs into the box and attack the crosses from either the left or the right flank more times than not. For corners and free kicks, as per always, it is set to 4. So starting off with the goalkeeper, Mike Maynard, he is set to come for crosses and have a balanced approach for his saving outside of the box. Of course, very capable with the ball at his feet, making those runs, but more times not because you aren't playing the highest of lines. It is set to 70, I know, but because you aren't playing the highest of lines and you've got the likes of Tomori and Kululu in front of him, I would say it doesn't necessarily have to be that. He doesn't necessarily have to make those runs off of his line and be a sweeper keeper. He can be a bit more of a traditional stay in your line and make the save approach. But of course, him and saving those crosses and claiming those aerial balls is very effective, which is why you need him to be more aggressive with that and have him set to come for crosses. Now, as for Kululu and Tomori, both of them are set to their base set of instructions. Whereas the likes of Calabria, he is set to join the attack and overlap as well as stick to position. You want him making those overlapping runs. He does supply quite a bit of width down the right-hand side, and we will see with the Pulisic instructions that more times than not, your right back will be the guy providing a lot of the width in certain moments. As for the likes of Theo Hernandez, he is also set to join the attack, but this time his run type is set to mix. We do see, and you are trying to replicate this, Theo Hernandez making those inverted runs, sometimes finding himself as a centre forward in some of the positions he does take up, or sometimes when he does have the ball at his feet, driving on into the midfield, driving on into the centre forward position, and then popping off shots for himself. Of course, he's a very attacking fullback, you could say, more than some others, you could say, as well as his defensive positioning is set to step up. You want him to be a bit more imposing, a bit more aggressive, and that's also does get him slightly higher up the field, which I quite like for Theo Hernandez going forward. And speaking of going forward, we'll start off with the DM position. Into our midfield we go. Set to cut passing lanes. Of course, for Krunic and the likes of Benacer, they are set to the same set of instructions. And then as for the attacking support, I've set it to balance. You do want him to make those advancing runs forward in certain moments. A very fluid midfield, you could say, almost playing as a bit of a box-to-box player at times. No interceptions, though, are set to be on form. You don't want him to be too aggressive and stepping out of position at times, opening up space and trying to almost expose your backline. You don't really want him doing that. Being the deep line playmaker is essential both for Krunic and Benacer. We do see them collect the ball off of the goalkeeper or the back four and then progress it quite nicely forward. And then as for the cover the wing approach, it is essential, especially if your fullbacks do bomb on forward. They do tend to pick up those little pockets of space on either the right or the left flanks, especially in the build-up play as well. Because you do have a tip to fast-paced build-up, so that means your fullbacks will naturally bomb forward more effectively, leaving the likes of Benacer in those little pockets of space, like I said, either on the left or the right-hand side. Then, moving slightly higher up, we've got the likes of Musa. He is an energy bunny of note, a fantastic signing from him. I think they signed him for, what was it, like 12 or 14 million from Valencia. A great pickup, might I say. He is said to also be a bit more of a box-to-box player, but he won't always advance into the box. He's going to stay on the edge of the area and look to try and facilitate whip-in crosses, obviously to the likes of Giroud or Leao or whoever's in the front line. Aggressive interceptions is said to be on because this is trying to replicate his playing style, his mentality. Like I say, he shows a lot of energy throughout the course of games, and this is more or less how you can get that out of him in EAFC 24. As for the defensive position, however, cover the wing, it makes sense, especially if your right back Calabria has bombed on too far forward. He will look to try and pick up the man in that wider area and try and make sure he's tracking his run. And then as for the positioning freedom, I did see him against Juventus especially. He was all over the place. And to try and replicate that, of course, free roam is essential, popping up in the little half spaces that are created in and around him. And then we've got one of my favorite players to watch. Honestly, the way that this man moves with the ball, without the ball, his energy off the ball, on the ball, fantastic, absolutely amazing. So he is said to be a bit more of the advanced midfielder, you could say, getting forward more times than not, as well as making those runs into the box, providing either cutback opportunities or potentially creating shot opportunities for himself. Normal interceptions though are set to be on for him, as well as cover the wing and free roam. You want him as well, popping up in the little half spaces, as well as having a very free role throughout the attacking third of the field. Then we'll start off with Giroud and then work our way out wide. But as for Olivier Giroud, he's set to stay central, be a target man. Of course, it goes without saying. His link of play is incredible, immaculate, linking up very effectively with the likes of Leao and Pulisic more times than not. Normal interceptions are set to be on. Of course, he is getting up there in age. You could even blame him as a goalkeeper, you could say, lol. But he is getting up there in age. You don't really want to overuse him on the defensive side of things. You want it more for his link-up play, his ability to back into the opposition, and then, potentially bring other players into the offensive side of things. And then, of course, come back on defense. He will look to sometimes drop off, link up play more effectively with the midfield, and then make those late darting runs into the center of the box. Moving out wide to the right-hand side, we've got Pulisic, a slightly differing role to what Leao has, but he's set to come back on defense, always looking to help out the fullback, cut inside, and then getting behind. Now, I did see that Leao looks to hold the left-hand side width a bit more than what Pulisic does, and Pulisic looks to try and get as close to Olivier Giroud as he can. So he'll look to try and, almost play as an inside forward on the right-hand side at times. Getting him behind, of course, it is essential, but making those arcing runs very close to Giroud, and cutting inside does effectively replicate and recreate that. Getting into the box is essential, as well as normal interceptions. And then finally, we've got the superstar of the team, Rafael Leao. He's set to have a basic defensive support, so he won't always look to come back, yes, but he will look to sometimes do that, and then more times than not, he will look to hang up the field a bit more and be the outlet ball more times than not. Like I said earlier, he is set to stay wide, holding more of the width in the team. But as for the support runs, however, I have set it to balance. You don't just want him making those runs in behind. Of course, he will naturally do that with the attacking tactics instructions, with the forward set to run, forward run, sorry. But again, he does have the ability to be a bit more of a target man, holding up the ball a bit more, backing into the opposition, linking up play quite effectively with the left back at times, or potentially coming short and cutting inside, linking up play with the midfield, popping off shots for himself. You do want him to have this array of dynamism to his game, because it does replicate a realistic Rafael Leao set of instructions. His interceptions are set to normal. You don't want him doing too much defensive work. And then as for his support on crosses, you want him making those advanced runs into the box, latching onto potential crosses. I mean, I think it was against Roma where he scored like that half-arsed bicycle kick. Fantastic nonetheless, but he made that run into the box for the cross. So guys, if you do rotate the team and Olivier Giroud as well as Pulisic come out, for the likes of Chukwueze and Jovic, they do have slightly differing roles and alterations to make for the instructions. So we'll start off with the likes of Chukwueze. He is said to have a balanced defensive support, not always looking to help the fullback that much, but he can do it if need be. For the chance creation, I set it to having a balance with. Sometimes you would want him to make those cutting inside runs, or potentially holding the width on the right-hand side, or potentially other times having him pop up in the little half spaces with your midfield. Those little half spaces that are generated. So that's why I've set him to having a balance with. But most importantly, for support runs, consistently challenging the back line with his runs in behind. He's got a lot of pace to do so, and he is very effective with it. As for the interceptions, I've set it to normal. And then for those supports on crosses, he can make those runs into the final third, of course. But more times than not, you do kind of want him having the ability to pick out the crosses, more or less try and be the facilitator on the edge of the area. As for Jovic, he also has a slightly different role. His support runs is set to balanced, so he will look to make those wider angled runs, not looking to always take up the central mantle of the attack. He won't always look to be the focus point of it, you could say. And then as for his attacking runs, however, it is set to mix. Sometimes having the ability to get in behind, of course, other times looking to be a bit more of the guy who's going to hold up play and link it up quite effectively and being a target man. And then as well as he can sometimes drop off and place a false nine in certain moments, also linking up play quite effectively. His interceptions are set to aggressive. You want him helping the likes of Leao and Chukwueze, trying to press the back line at times. And then for his defensive support, not set to come back on defense this time, but he can do so, as well as he can look to stay forward and be a bit more of the outlet ball. So yes, people, that is my version of Pioli's 4-3-3 system in the game FC24. If you have enjoyed this, smash that like button, subscribe if you are new, and tomorrow I'll be out with a very interesting set of tactics for you.